Hello students and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy, and we will be continuing with the economic survey lectures. So let's begin with the 7th chapter, which is about the industry. So it is talking about all about the reforms. Now the industrial sector, if you look at, there are three main sectors that we talk about, that is the primary, agriculture, mining, etc. Secondary, that is the industries, and tertiary, that is the services sector. So the India's growth trajectory has been such that initially in the first 5-year plan we did focus on the primary sector, then our focus shifted towards the secondary sector, specifically the heavy industries, but we did not have the wherewithal or the capital to basically sustain that focus on the industry. So we shifted the focus back onto agriculture. And after few years, or let's say in the mid 1980s, what happened is the influx of the services sector came. The ICT, information and communication technology revolution happened. So suddenly our focus then subsequently shifted to the service sector. And as we see, service sector has developed to quite a lot extent, but what has remained undeveloped, or rather I would say underdeveloped, is the industrial sector. Now why did we start focusing on services sector before developing the industrial sector completely? Is because services sector we could see an exponential growth in that, and we wanted to have that growth so that growth can be utilized in the other sectors. So that was one of the things. Now having said that, now it's high time that India achieves what it can, means attain its potential in the industrial sector as well. So as you know, service sector contributes highest share to GDP, then the industrial sector, and the lowest is by the primary sector. But industrial sector, mind you, is very important. It provides, of course, more number of jobs, as in per unit of expenditure, industrial sector provides more jobs than the service sector, so it plays a vital role. And of course the infrastructure development, everything like this comes for the in the industrial sector. So let us understand what has been the performance of India as compared to the rest of the world, as well as its own performance trend over the years. So first thing we'll look at here is the performance of selected countries in the manufacturing sector. So the countries that we are taken here is, like let's say our competitors in different markets of the world. India also wants to be a superpower, so we cannot be looking down or looking at smaller countries, but the leaders as well as some of the countries who are probably sort of similar to us. So how we are comparing with them? So if you look at comparison, you look at China. Of course, in manufacturing there is no match for China, which is very clear from this. Even USA is lower. In services you may find USA higher, but in manufacturing there is no match. And if you look at India over here, India is almost one fifth of the index that China is at. So we have to do a lot. However, we are comparing India and China, but you need to also understand or take into context, especially for your mains answer or the personality test, the fact that China's development is a very brutal kind of a development. What do I mean by that is, India develops along with its democratic nature intact, whereas China develops without it. So in China, if the road needs to go from the particular area, there will be an announcement that, boss, this road is going to be developed from this area, everyone should vacate. If you do not, the work will still start. Now that kind of a thing, of course, we don't do in India. There are human rights, there are natural rights, there are democracy, there is rule of law. So India is achieving or comparing with China along with the presence of rule of law in our country. So that has to be remembered. Now, as a percentage of GDP, again, India is lower than the other comparable countries. China is close to 40%, India is in middle, that is 25%, because service sector, of course, plays a very important role, or very high percentage it has. Now, coming on to the optimistic PMI, that is Purchasing Managers Index. What is this optimism all about? What is Purchasing Managers Index? Purchasing Manager Index anticipates what the future coming months or quarters are going to be like. So generally, if it is above 50, it is considered to be optimistic, that is positive. If it is below 50, it is considered to be pessimistic or negative. So as you can see, since the last 2 years, it has been over 50. That means on the optimistic side. It is calculated based on the purchasing managers are doing for different industries, for different companies. If they're purchasing more and more, you can expect more and more production to happen. So that is on the optimistic side. So optimism has been there continuously when you look at the purchasing managers index. Now, the budget has talked about the Atmanirbharta in pulses. There's one more place where the budget has not talked about, but we do see Atmanirbharta in the industrial sector. That is the production of cement. Very important, because India needs at least $10 trillion worth of investment for infrastructure development in the coming years. Now, the most important role will be played by steel as well as cement, because you have concrete structures, steel structures, and a mix of both reinforced concrete structures. So cement and steel plays a very important role. We'll get to cement as steel as well, but before, let's have a look at cement production. So it is said that the production of cement is now becoming self-sufficient for India. That means we are able to generate as much as we are requiring for our production. So if you can see, the production has been consistently high. Now in this industrial development or any graph for that matter, you will see slight dip in one financial year, that is 2020-21. Please keep in mind that that drop is due to the COVID situation. So if you eliminate the COVID situation, the rest of the graph is having an upward track. If you look at the installed capacity with respect to geographical location, the southern India has the highest capacity, then it is the northern India, and then the rest of the region. So southern India produces the highest amount of cement in India. Now, as I said, after cement, steel is very important, and the government is hell-bent in a positive way to develop the nation with respect to the development and infrastructure as well. So we can see use or demand of steel is going to go up. So the industries are also incentivized to produce more and more, and you can see the impact with respect to the increased production of steel. The slight dip which you can see, again, as I said, is the COVID year. Apart from that, there is a consistent increase in the production of steel as well. So as an economy, if you take the total overall production, we saw that of steel, we saw that of cement. If you look at the overall production, it has been very robust. Now, robust word is used because, see, there is increase, but not much. But at the same time, this increase is there wherein there is a global slowdown. So you should not forget this, that there has been a global slowdown in the world. Still, the entire generic production of the country our country is still on the rise. So it's very robust. It is growing despite of the slowdown. When the global economy does well, our economy will have that positive push as well. But without that also, Indian economy or the production specifically in this case is doing well. If you look at exports, which is marked by green, this is also seeing an increase. Of course, imports are also increasing. Now, imports also increasing because with respect to the value, there are certain compulsory imports which India has, which we cannot do away with. Now, if you look at the textile industry's performance, it has been great. India has been historically a great player in textile industry, but the economic survey and the budget, focuses on it because we are facing some problem over here. What is the problem that we are facing? In the textile sector, countries like China and Vietnam are developing cheaper textiles because of two factors. One, very low income of the employees who are producing that, inhumane, subhuman conditions wherein they sit in a small room, 50 people will sit and do things. So that kind of a situation we don't want. That makes the cost to go low. We can't do that. Second is, in India, there are logistical nightmares when it comes to textile industry. What is that let's say a nightmare of textile industry? The production of the cotton, or the cotton takes place in, let's say, Gujarat, Maharashtra. Now that cotton goes back to the southern India for getting converted into yarn, which goes back again to northern, central and northern India to get converted into textile. So there is a transportation here, then the transportation back here, so which increases the cost of textile. So the government is now looking at different hubs at different places so that this huge transportation cost can be addressed and the prices can go down. If that happens, we can even do better than what we are already doing. Now further, if you look at the innovation, we have always cried about or complained about lack of innovation, lack of R&D. Though India's spend or expenditure on research and development remains still quite low, which needs to be improved. But still, if you look at the patent, the trademarks, the copyrights, that scenario of India has increased drastically in the last few years. I would say drastically because if you look at it, here it's 60,000, but all of a sudden you're talking about close to 100 or close to 115,000, which is close to double the number that we are talking about. Same is the case with trademarks. Trademarks from 300,000 have increased to over 500,000 now. If you look at the design patents that were being filed in 2016-17 were close to 10,000 means tens of thousands mean 1 lakh. Now it is almost tripled. And when it comes to copyrights, copyright has also more than doubled. So in the last 7-8 years, we have either doubled these things or tripled these things, which is a great amount of increment or improvement. Now, India's R&D expenditure, as I said, needs to increase. So, we are doing this despite the presence of low amount of expenditure on R&D. Imagine if this improves. So, what is our spend on R&D? It is less than 1% of GDP. If you look at countries like Israel spends more than 5% of GDP. That is why Israel has cutting-edge technology. Certain technologies are present only in Israel and nowhere else in the world. One such technology which India will be taking from Israel is the technology to convert the sea water into drinkable water. Not just that, when you talk about defense, missiles, protective missiles, fighter missiles, or various things, Israel does exceptionally well in that as well. So what we have to do is increase in fact, you can look at with respect to USA, UK, and various other countries, Israel is spending more than any of the country mentioned here. India's spend needs to first get out of the block, at least cross that 1% mark, and then probably aspire for 2 and 3% going forward. Now, when it comes to MSMEs, there has been a consistent increase in the number of MSMEs. Also, this is going to further increase because now what the government has done in the budget is increase the ambit of MSMEs. They have increased widened the scope of definition of MSMEs. The MSMEs are defined based on investment and turnover. Those investment and turnover limits have been increased. So, more number of companies would be termed under the MSME sector. If last but not the least, if we look at the share of states with respect to the gross state value added, this is the graph. So you can look at it. Gujarat is the highest and very closely followed by Maharashtra. Then you have Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, so on and so forth. So you have Gujarat and Maharashtra, the top performing state, close to 13%. So one fourth of the entire gross value that is being added is coming from these two states. If you add the state of Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka, that is 11, 8 and 7. So again, close to 11, 8 and 7, close to 26%. So again, these total five states gives you approximately 50% of the gross value added, and the remaining state then provide the remaining 50%. So it is quite concentrated over here. Now, UP has a high population, so high human capital. That is why this is fair enough. But state like Gujarat and Maharashtra, which has of course lower population than UP, are still doing way better because of technological development, better industrial development, better service sector, so on and so forth. So it still remains to be seen that in what better way we can utilize our demographic dividend, because smaller states are giving way more than bigger states. So the other states also need to, especially states like UP, Bihar and all, needs to buckle up and do even better. Thank you.